like to thank our candidates for taking time out of their busy schedules to be here. I saw they were in Wahoo last night, so I know they're getting around. So we appreciate them being here. My name is Harlan Potomi. I'm superintendent of schools in Cedar Bluffs. We are honored to host this event where our students have had the opportunity to not only learn about democracy in action, but be active participants in that process. Tonight's forum will follow a nonpartisan, impartial format. There will be roughly an hour of questions to our candidates, followed by a 30-minute informal meet and greet after. You'll have time to meet and greet after the questions. For tonight's layout, please note the restrooms are in the east entrance where you came in. Behind you, on the south side of the gym, is a table with iPads on it. That's for exit polls. So as you leave, you can actually select one of the candidates. It will only let you select one. You can't select all six, but select one of your candidates, and then we'll have those results at the end of the week on our Facebook page, which I think is pretty cool. Opposite the stage, there's coffee and cookies and lemonade and stuff down there. You're welcome to take that at any time, but please limit your conversations to small quietness, because we do have stuff being recorded. We want to hear the candidates, and we also have live streaming with the Big Dog 98.9 FM is broadcasting, and so we want them to be able to be heard. The northeast corner of the gym is Saunders County Clerk Deanne Nice and Assistant Debbie Dunker. They're here if you would like to register or find out anything about the new voter registration laws. They're here to help you with any of those questions. Also directly north of the audience is our question screeners. So it's comprised of a couple staff members and a lot of students, and they're here to help you with your questions. And so if you would like to submit a question to be asked, there is index cards at the end of the rows of where you're seating, and there's pens there, and you can fill one out. And once you have it completed, you just raise it above your head, and one of our greeters and our ushers will come and get it from you. They'll take it over to the screeners, and then the screeners will look at the questions. Sometimes they'll combine questions in case there's several that are alike. We hope to get to all of our questions, but we may not, just due to time constraints, but we'll do our best. Mr. Brosick, our civics teacher, is Master of Ceremonies. Our student moderators tonight that have been selected is Amy Shanahan, Carter Newbert, Maddie Thomas, Tanya Peterson, and Tyler Martin. Next to them is Breslin Timmerman. She's my timer, so she's going to be showing the group the time they have, and she'll do a countdown for them and reset. And again, if you have any questions from the audience or anything, just raise your hand, and one of the student assistants will be there to help you. So at this time, I would ask Ms. Breslin Timmerman if you would come forward, please, and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I didn't hear the walk. We do this every single morning at our school, and at the end, all the kids go, "Go Wildcats!" So, I didn't hear that. That's okay. We'll get you guys trained. All right. So without further ado, I'm going to turn tonight's event over to Mr. Brosick and the students at Cedar Bluffs. The questions, you'll have 60 seconds, and everyone will be allowed to answer the questions, but we'll turn it over to Mr. Brosick. You bet.
Good evening, everyone. You know, we live in an incredible nation. What makes our nation so great? We could stay here all night and talk about what makes our nation the great nation it is. But one thing we would all agree upon is that our form of government, our representative democracy, gives us so much. See, you and me, we have the power. We decide the direction of our community. We decide the direction of our state. We decide the direction of our nation. We pick our leaders. We pick our mayors. We pick our governors. We pick the President of the United States. We pick our lawmakers. We pick our board members. We pick our supervisors. We pick our legislatures. We choose our representatives. We choose our senators. These are the people that represent us. The members of the class of 2024, Ms. Yasa and I are so happy and pleased for them. They are excited to participate in the election process for the first time in their lives. All of our seniors are registered to vote. All of our young men have registered with the Selective Service. They look forward to going into the ballot booth for the first time here in several weeks. They're busy building their knowledge base to decide which individuals share their ideologies and who would best represent them in the many elected offices. Tonight, we focus on Legislative District 23. Our students have been given the opportunity to witness government in action at both the local and the state levels. They have discussed issues that are important to them with people like Jim Henry, a member of the Cedar Bluffs Village Board, with Scott Suitsdorf and Rob Teason, both running for District 4 Supervisor. They had the opportunity to visit with State Senator Bosselman outside the legislative chamber, and had the pleasure of visiting with our governor, Governor Jim Pillen, for over 45 minutes, just our students and the governor in the old Senate chamber. Tonight, we host a forum, not a debate. The seniors have seen plenty of debates and the ugliness of a debate, but we're in Nebraska. We're special people here in our state. So we're here to hear from the candidates. We want to provide the candidates the opportunity to express their opinions on the issues important to our students and the members of our audience. Each candidate will have the chance to provide their stance on these questions with a 60-second time frame. The president will keep track of that for us. We would like to thank all 6 candidates attending tonight. I can express to you our gratitude and how you're helping our community, and being partial, especially our students, as they venture into the political process. So thank you for being here. So without further ado, it is with pleasure that I'm going to ask each candidate to introduce themselves. They're given 90 seconds to introduce themselves. We will start here with Mr. Fouillon, and we will work down the table.
I'm on, huh? Okay, is this audio good? Okay, good. Hey, I just want to thank everybody for being here. I congratulate all the 18-year-olds for registering for the Selective Service, and I congratulate those that are registered to vote. And so, thanks very much. This is a great thing. I wish this would have happened when I was in high school. My name is Dennis Fouillon. I'm from Prague, rural Prague. I grew up around Malmo and then moved to the Prague area after I got married. I returned from the Navy and, well, I won't even tell you the year. So my whole reason for running is basically based on my faith, my family, and farming. Farming's been my whole life. I think agriculture is the #1 industry in this state, and so what I want to do is to provide something that's going to make sure agriculture stays strong. When the ag economy is strong, Nebraska is strong. So I don't have much time here, so I'm just going to kind of let it go at that. But I stand for the Second Amendment. I'm pro-life. I think we need to control our border. I'm in favor of protecting veterans' benefits, and my time is just about it. So thank you.
All right, good evening, everybody. My name is Jacob Wolf, and I just want to start off by saying thank you so much to the civics class and Cedar Bluffs High School. Getting the invite in the mail was first great to see you coming to the United States Postal Service as opposed to email. But also, I sent that invite to everybody I knew that was involved politically, saying how neat it was that the high school civics and government class was engaged like this, because that's a lost art in these United States, but it's not lost here. So it's really inspiring to see that. A little bit about me: I'm a 5th-generation Nebraskan and a former naval officer. I led a team of Navy divers across the world, conducting high-risk diving missions in support of naval operations. I met my wife in Florida, Panama City Beach. She's really pregnant right now, so she's not here. So I'm due to be a father any day now, to potentially a future Wildcat, because we live just 5 minutes south of here. And now I work in commercial construction. And what my wife and I got involved in this race in is to represent the next generation. We
which is largely the people in this room, it's the people in this school, and the young families across this district. We want to shore up the current legacy of Nebraskans and usher in the next generation so that they can grow up in a place to be proud of, that they can call home, so they can learn here, they can train here, and not leave for neighboring states, but stay here and work for Nebraska.
All right, I'm Jared Storm. I live in Butler County. I've got 5 children, ages 9 through 17. 2 of them in high school, 2 middle school, 1 in elementary. So I'm living the high school days right now in my house. I have a good friend from Wahoo, Tom Garish, Mr. Garish, that worked here for years. Good friend of mine. He spoke highly about this school district. And I'm greatly impressed at you holding this forum. More young people need to get involved in the process. So this is very special. I couldn't wait to come here. I'm an ag pilot. We aerial spray for crop dusters. We fly the yellow airplanes really low and around power lines and stuff. Do that, and then we have Storm Aeronautics in David City, which is where we manufacture parts for aircraft and export them around the world. A little bit about myself, I guess. I graduated from Kansas State University with a degree in kinesiology. Then I went to Fort Hays State University and have a degree in education. Taught school for 1 year in Kansas City. Realized really quickly that education probably wasn't my field. I think being an educator is one of the most highest callings in the nation. I mean, a good teacher touches young people's lives more than anybody else. And everybody in this room could probably look back and think about who was the most influential person in their life. And I guarantee you it was a teacher or a coach more than likely. Thank you.
It is on. There we go. Good evening, everyone. My name is Allie French, also running for legislature here in District 23. Thank you all so much for being here. I can absolutely echo what they said. It was extraordinarily cool to see one of our local high schools so involved in taking the steps to put an event together like this. I was actually doing the same thing just last year for my grassroots group, Nebraskans Against Government Overreach, because we recognize the overreach that is occurring in our state and the need for the second house to get engaged and get involved. So that's what I've been doing. I have been live, breathe, sleeping all things legislature. Unfortunately, far too many of our representatives cater more to their special interests and lobbyist group than I feel they do the actual hardworking Nebraskans. So I'm a mom on a mission. I've got a 3-year-old, a 7-year-old, and one on the way, just a few more months to go. And I want to ensure that my children know the same freedoms that I grew up with and the generations before me fought and died for. And so this is something that I will give anything and everything for. I will work harder than probably anybody else could, and I love it. I'm good at debate. I read every single bill that's introduced, and unfortunately, I can't say the same for a vast majority of our representatives.
Good evening, everyone. Mine was on too. Is it? Yeah, great. Good evening, everyone. Hi, my name is Larissa Schultz. I am also running for legislature in the 23rd District, and I always like to begin by expressing my gratitude. I'm deeply grateful to the students who put this together. I'm grateful to the school district for allowing us to be here. And I'm grateful for all of you for taking the time to be here tonight to hear about these candidates running for legislature. So I work for a food nonprofit in Omaha. I've lived in Saunders County for about 20 years. I'm also a market gardener. I'm a beekeeper. I'm an events manager. I'm just a regular working person. So I understand the challenges that people face when they're trying to afford things like housing, food, childcare. My most important issues are making sure that everybody who turns on the tap knows that there is clean, safe drinking water coming out of it, making sure that everyone has access to healthy, affordable foods, and making sure that folks outside the city can actually visit a doctor within a reasonable distance of my house. Their house. My house. I also live outside the city. And now I've lost my train of thought, but thank you all for being here. I'm running for legislature because I believe that voters deserve a real choice.
Good evening. My name is Alan Zabodny. Thank you all for coming, and thank you to Cedar Bluffs High School and the students for putting this on. My family consists of Rhonda, that God willing will be married 30 disabilities, and I have the 22 counties in northeast Nebraska. My priorities: less government, high-speed internet, property tax relief, agriculture, which is Nebraska's #1 industry, pro-life, pro-Second Amendment, and finally, we must secure our border. Cells that want to hurt us are probably already here. They could attack our power grid, our water, any number of things to hurt us. And finally, I'm running because I love Legislative District 23. When it's said and done, I will be buried less than a mile away from where I was born, near David City. Thank you.
Thank you very much for introducing yourselves. The questions that you're about to be asked will be asked to each one of you. The questions were written by our students here at Cedar Bluffs in our constitutional law and in our American government class. I think you will be impressed by the questions. Members of the audience, just a reminder that you can just raise your hand and one of our students will bring you a pen and a note card, and then just once you write your question, just raise your hand again and they will collect the card from you. But we'll begin our forum this evening with a question from Atanya Peterson. Atanya?
Hello, candidates. My name is Atanya Peterson. I am a senior here at Cedar Bluffs Public Schools. It is a pleasure to have you all here. We will begin our forum with Mr. Fuyan. Mr. Fuyan, the time commitment of a state senator is fairly big, and the pay is about $13,000 per year. What motivates you to run for the state legislature?
The money. And I believe it's only 12,000, but I'll take that 13. I really am motivated because of my love for agriculture. I've been working to represent farmers for about the last 25 or 26 years in the Nebraska Soybean Association, working down in Lincoln with the legislature, and in the past 6 years I've been going to Washington, D.C. about twice a year just to communicate with our federal delegation. I've also been asked by several people, including Bruce Boston, who's in right now, and he can't run again because of his second term. So I've got a lot of interest in pro-life. Pro-life is very important to me. My family is very important. And so all of those things combined, agriculture, my family, protecting the innocent life, those are the things that have motivated me to be here.
For me, it's all about service. Service to my community, service to my state. I took an oath to defend the U.S. Constitution just 10 years ago, and that oath hasn't expired. It's public service, it's accountability. I want to put servant back into the term public servant, which is what all of our elected officials are. I have a great employer that has agreed that, if we win this thing, that they're on board with it. So the money, it becomes a non-issue at that point, which is great. And more employers across the state need to encourage and foster civic involvement like that. And what we got into as well is that so much of Nebraska, we love how Nebraskan we are. Lord knows I'm guilty of it. But we are so focused internally, and we're not often looking out. I've lived all over the country, I've lived all over the world, and I understand places that have a higher or a lower cost of living and different practices and policies that work across the United States, and we can bring those here and make them effective in the state.
For me, like I mentioned, I have 5 children at home, and I'm purely running for this to serve the District 23, but also for my children. And we live in a time in this world, in this country, in this state, where it's very uncertain. People are scared. Turn on the TV, watch on the federal level. Look at the state legislature, not this year so much, but last year. And we have a radical right, we have a radical left in this country. And most of us are in the middle. I would say right middle. And I am doing this because we need good, strong leaders to stand up and lead. And that's what I want to do. I'm going to go to the state legislature and serve all of you and protect children, my children, you, and your children. And that's what I intend to do.
Well, just 4 to 5 years ago, I was just a stay-at-home mom. And I discovered that our world was headed in the wrong direction. Suddenly there were restrictions and lockdowns and mandates that that threaten the livelihood of our military service members, our doctors, our teachers, even many of our students. And I went down to the legislature and I fought for 2 years to get our legislature to acknowledge the personal choice and religious beliefs of those who didn't want to get a shot that they felt was experimental or wear a mask. And in that process, I have learned every inch of that legislative policy, procedure, and ruling. But unfortunately, we still can't seem to get the job done. For some reason, common sense is lacking in that building, and I would really like to go and change that. I think that I would do a phenomenal job at it, and I just want to make Nebraska a better place for each and every one of us.
Well, by now I'm supposed to have a succinct answer to this question. There's a lot of things that motivate me to run for the legislature. I had a lot of people who I really value and trust tell me that it was time for me to step up and live out my values. And I believe that you deserve to see your values represented on the ballot. So often our senators from the city don't understand what the issues are out here. And unfortunately, I think a lot of our senators from outside of the city aren't necessarily fighting hard for their individual districts. So I would aim to be a voice for the people of Saunders, Butler, and Colfax counties, and represent something a little bit different than I think you're going to see from some of my opponents.
Tanya, thank you for the question. Why am I running? Well, over 40 years ago, when I was at the University of Nebraska, I was lucky enough to be chosen as an intern for State Senator Lauren Schmidt, who served in the legislature for many, many years from this district. And I guess you could say it got in my blood. Tomorrow they're going to make a big decision on LB 388, and that's, are we going to get some property tax relief? So I told you what my priorities were in my introduction, so I just want to talk about, for the last 20 years of my job, I've testified in front of Appropriations Committee, but property taxes, I've become obsessed with them. Ag is our #1 industry, and we can't start every growing year $70 per acre in the hole because we have to pay the government just to be able to farm our ground. So that needs to be addressed, and I will fight for that every day. Every time I get on the mic, it will be about property taxes, no matter what the issue is. So I think that's that important to us.
Good evening. I'm Carter Newberg, and I'm a junior here at Cedar Bluffs. Thank you all for coming once again. The next question comes from the audience, and we will start with Mr. Wolf. So knowing our communities have diverse needs, wants, and interests, how do you plan to support their voices, even if you don't personally agree?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it starts with having open and honest dialogue and communication. It's about being available. It's about being transparent. So often, it's hard to find anybody who agrees with you 100%. My wife certainly does it. Her and I get into some debates sometimes. But at the end of the day, it's about recognizing that you have principles that you agree on and that you're likely not going to cave on. And I respect that about you. And I hope that you respect that about me. I've heard an analogy about I'm standing in concrete and you're standing in concrete. The concrete immediately surrounding us, that's the principles that form us, that hold us up and hold us strong. There may be cracks along it, and that's where we can cave, but our overall structure of our humanity, that part is going to stay strong. And it really is about that dialogue and being available to constituents across the needs of Colfax County, of Saunders here, and of Butler, and coming to what's going to be best for the whole district and for the state of Nebraska.
Probably the one of the things that I've learned the most running for office that's been very pleasant for me is we all have our ideas, what we believe in. We all are kind of in this little box. And when I ran for office, I'm no different. I was in my box. Running for office, I can go to Ashland to talk to people. I can go to Lee to talk to people, Wahoo, anywhere in between. People are different groups. Talk to women, talk to men, and it's made me grow as a person. And so, and what I've learned from that is you have to listen to everybody that's talking to you on an issue. And then you have to have the wisdom and the common sense to do what's right for the people of this district. And that's what I intend to do, is go to the legislature, work with both groups of people. I know it's not nonpartisan, but it is partisan. But I would very much listen to both sides of the story and come up and do what's best for the people of this district.
Well, this is actually the #1 rule of our grassroots group, is to be peaceful, respectful, and fully law-abiding. We don't get anywhere, we don't change anybody's minds by being rude and shut down and unwilling to have a conversation. And I've been very good at that. As many of you know, the last year's session was extraordinarily tumultuous. There was a lot of controversy, there was a lot of anger from both sides of the political spectrum, and it is important, and what I was able to do was stay calm, be able to have a conversation with somebody who had already decided that I didn't necessarily agree with them, but I was able to stand there and have a conversation. And no, at the end of the day, we didn't agree. But we both saw where each other were coming from, and we recognized that this issue is important to us. We might not always agree on everything, but I can bet you there's at least something we do agree on, and that's a good place to start.
I think it starts with basic respect, right? Respect for people who are different from us, and the civility that we express to each other is the physical expression of that respect. So I don't know, not everybody is going to agree with me, but I know that I will always have my door open for all perspectives, and I really believe that we need to protect the nonpartisan nature of our unicameral. Like Mr. Storm alluded to, it is nonpartisan, but it's partisan, and I think that nothing gets done if we don't work together across party lines. So it's very important to me. In fact, some of the best bills before the legislature were co-sponsored by both Republicans and Democrats this session, and I think that's the only way that things get done. Civility, respect, and kindness.
Thank you, Carter. How do we tackle to support interests that are diverse? You need to compromise most of the time. You have to listen first so you understand perspectives that are different than yours. You know what your perspectives are, but you need to listen to what someone else's are. Where's our common ground? We probably have more in common than we think we do, so that's really important to find that common ground. I will never have to check a text to see how I'm supposed to vote. I will always try to do the right thing. When doing the right thing is easy, always do the right thing. But when doing the right thing is hard, always do the right thing. Thank you.
It's really hard to be number 6 on the question, because there's really nothing left to say. Listen. You always have to listen, and respect. I'm just echoing what everybody's saying here, but you have to be willing to do that too. You can have really solid principles, but you have to be able to listen to other people too, because they have solid principles. And then you have to try to come to terms and give where you can give, and hold your ground where you have to hold, stand for your principles, but you still have to be able to listen and give in and do the compromise, just like Alan just said. So I've always been able to do that too. I can talk to anybody about anything, and have to just try to make sure you remember their ideas are important to them, just as yours are important to you, and then try to work together.
Good evening. I'm Madeline Thomas. I'm a senior here at Cedar Bluffs High School. Thank you, candidates, for coming tonight. For this question, we'll start with Mr. Storm. Saunders County has more bridges than any other county in Nebraska. Currently, many of these bridges are closed because they no longer meet government standards. What could the state of Nebraska do to improve infrastructure within our state?
Our Senator Bosselman has been very key on bridges. In fact, I read a review on him after, as he's term limited out, and they talked about him being a bridge senator. So he really worked hard on good bridges, and it is crazy that Saunders County has more bridges than any other county. And so, but that's key, because if you're a farmer and this bridge is closed here, or this bridge is closed there, they need that to get commodities from one place to another place. So it's very important to do that. So we have to have the funds for infrastructure to build and maintain those bridges. And as a state senator, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to advocate for the farmers of this District 23 in Saunders County, as well as the residents, and have as many good bridges as we can have. Infrastructure is key to this district.
We actually talked about this last night. There was actually recently legislation that would have appropriated $10 million towards transportation, and they ended up cutting it down to $10 million. And I find that extraordinarily unfortunate that a majority of our senators don't prioritize our infrastructure and transportation. It is the key route to consumerism and travel and modes of getting to work. It is something that we should prioritize, and I would look forward to working with the other senators to ensure that that's at the top priority. This year they started out with only $20 million allotted at the floor for them to spend, and they ended up making it to $430 million before the day was out. Obviously, we have a lot of priorities that are placed with pet projects and programs, and I believe we need to be looking at the necessities of Nebraskans before the fun stuff.
I did not know that Saunders County had more bridges than any other county. That's very interesting. A fun fact about Nebraska, we actually have more surface waterways than any other state, so I'm actually not surprised to hear about that. But it starts with prioritizing infrastructure spending, right? And I think that, again, like I alluded to in my introduction, I think a lot of folks in the city don't really understand what it means to have one bridge out in a community like Saunders County. That one bridge could be the difference between a 20-minute commute and an hour-long commute. We've got to prioritize making sure that folks can get from place to place safely. So I strongly prioritize infrastructure spending. It's very important, especially in our rural communities.
The reality is, with the money that's available, we obviously can't do it all at once. But we need to prioritize which ones need to happen. You know, when I was growing up, equipment was much smaller. Combines would raise up and maybe go over the bridge. And now, bridges are a lot of times a county issue, but we need to maximize federal infrastructure money because a lot of our infrastructure is aging. And the federal government's going to give it. I don't love it that they are giving away that much money, but we need to benefit ourselves as well because people other places don't say no to it. So that's important. I think we can certainly work with different funding structures and figure out which ones we need to prioritize, and just, we got to start and slowly work at it, because a lot of our infrastructure, not just in bridges in our state, is aging, and if you don't take care of that, you're never going to have economic development and growth that we want to see. So when I grew up, the combine drove between the railings and the bridge. Didn't even have to raise it up over the edges. Now you have to unhook the header and drag it behind. Prioritize. Absolutely. You need to prioritize the work that needs to be done soonest. Work within your budget. The state has a budget. Every government entity has a budget, and we need to stay within our budgets. So let's do the priority jobs, make sure those get done first, and work a little at a time. Like Alan said, you can't do it all at once, but it's going to be very important to make sure that we address these problems. Larissa did mention too that one bridge out means a huge difference in the commute time. When I take grain to town, sometimes it can mean about a 10-mile difference because I have to stay within the means of the load limit on the bridge. So we have to make sure that we stay within our budget and prioritize.
As a fiscal conservative, I don't like saying that I have spending priorities, but as a custodian of taxpayer dollars, I'll say I have spending responsibilities. Those three things would be education, public safety, and roads. And really, public safety and roads can go hand in hand with each other. Not just in Saunders County with the most bridges across the state, but across the United States, the Army Corps of Engineers has labeled 70% of our bridges as degraded. And that is a terrible statistic. It's terrifying to drive across it. And not only that, but it's inconvenient. We've had a bridge out in Utan now for 5 months. It started with a 2-month project. I'll give you an extra month because January was super cold and nothing works in that kind of weather. But now we're overdue. So it's about getting the right money to the right places, like the bridges and our road infrastructure to facilitate the movement of commerce across our state, but also selecting the right qualified people to build it.
big question. To be perfectly honest, there has to be a good balance and it needs to remain in local control. When it comes down to it, the people need to have their say. There need to be public hearings at whatever level of government those changes are taking place. Our zoning also covers a lot of that, and I will tell you that our state actually does a phenomenal job balancing the conservatory areas of our state with residential, commercial, and so on and so forth. In fact, if you buy certain plots of commercial land that have wetlands on them, you're also then required to go and buy land in another area to restore that wetland in that other space. So we do have some very good measures, but the most important part when it comes to any sort of advancement or growth is that we have local control and we have engagement of the second house.
Yeah, I mean, suburban sprawl is a huge issue in communities like ours. It impacts the availability of land for agricultural use as well as conservation. And while housing, and specifically affordable housing, is incredibly necessary, I agree with Ms. French, it has to be a balance. And I think one important way to kind of keep some of our land in ag and conservation while still making sure that we do have affordable housing is revitalizing the core of our small communities, our downtown areas, our old houses. Conservation should always be voluntary. It's obviously very important. But yeah, I don't want to see all of our farmland getting eaten up by just folks who, I mean, admittedly, they want this great country living that we all enjoy. But we need to be focused on building up within our small communities as well as making sure that we have plenty of land left for ag.
For this question, I'm going to put on my old mayor hat for a second, because I've run into this. We had a gentleman who was trying to develop wetland at the end of our runway for our airport. Not the best place to mix airplanes and geese. So what we did is we have a process. We have planning that goes into a planning commission. We worked with the FAA. We worked with state and federal authorities, and finally got him to understand that we probably didn't want geese that he could hunt at the end of our runways. And we were able to buy that ground for the city and make sure it was safe for everyone. So planning's the big part. Public hearings, input, those kinds of things are the priorities. Obviously, you can't build or do anything where there's an endangered species or something like that, but balance is the key, and having public input and good planning will avoid most of your problems. I guess this is a subject I'm not really up on, except for the fact that I can tell you that every farmer is the ultimate conservationist, in my opinion. We don't want to damage the environment. We don't want to damage our water. We want to make sure that there's clean water for everyone. And we raise our families on this same ground, and so we have to consume the products and we have to consume the water. So restoration of habitat or conservation is always very important to me. I don't really have a plan for that, so I think I probably would have to consult with people that are more in touch with that sort of thing than I am.
So when I first heard the question, I thought, as the city expands in habitat restoration, I thought about what's happening here in Cedar Bluffs as far as habitat restoration. But Habitat for Humanity, not the nonprofit group, but for us folks that live here, and seeing what developments are going up, but not necessarily new developments happening in Wahoo or Utan, but existing homes here in Cedar Bluffs that are getting refurbished, so folks can stay here and not move to the city or purchase a need for a new development. And then, like Mr. Fuyan said, that your farmer is your best environmentalist and your best conservation. And we also need to protect that and really push back on what the EPA is doing with their 30 by 30 land grabs, because they will take that habitat restoration, and we want to keep our wetlands here, and we want to keep our gardens and our natural resources, and they will try and take that and expand those and really get away from the economic driver in the state, which is agriculture.
I'm a hunter. I love to hunt ducks, pheasants, quail, turkey. Grew up doing that. Can't do it as much as I used to. So I'm a habitat not growing or dying. So there's a balance. There's a real balance there. We have to protect sensitive areas, obviously, but there's some areas if the farmer wants to sell his land to develop the city and can come to an agreement with the city to do that, I'm all for that. I do not agree with eminent domain. I don't like the government coming in and taking people's land away from them unless they absolutely have to for a highway or something like that. But it's truly a balance.
I want to thank you one last time for joining us tonight. I'm Tyler Martin. I'm a senior at Cedar Bluffs, and my first question is going to start with Larissa Schultz, and it is from the audience. Tomorrow is the last day of the legislature session. One bill for the vote is a $10,000 in support for private schools. If you were voting, how would you vote and why?
I'll be honest with you, I would vote against 1402. First of all, I believe that the second house deserves a voice, okay? We have a petition process for a reason in this state, and the Support Our Sports campaign gathered enough signatures to place that issue on the ballot. I believe you deserve a right to vote. I also believe that our public money should stay with public schools. Now, I'm a proud product of a parochial school as well as a private school. I've had the privilege of attending both. But if you want to attend a private school, that's something that you should be choosing to pay for. I think strong public schools are the heart of our communities, and I don't want to see funding taken away from them.
To address that issue, we need all schools. That's an important thing for the state of Nebraska. And education is our great equalizer, and we need to have it. Before they do sign and die tomorrow, I'm a big process person. And enough signatures were collected to put on the ballot, and I never see harm in the voter deciding. I think that's the right place for it to be, given the process and where we are in the process right now. To rush ideas through that aren't given enough debate and talk, which has happened in the legislature for several years now, is the wrong way to do public policy. So if I had to say right now, I would not support that, because public schools need to come first when it comes to public money, because that's what government has to do. But I am a full supporter of, you have enough signatures, the process says let the voter decide, and I don't think we should do something to circumvent that.
I guess right now I'm on the opposite side of what has been said, and I simply say that the people that are sending their kids to parochial schools or private schools are also paying taxes, and they're paying taxes to the public schools, but they're not getting the benefit of the public school education, so they're not utilizing the services that they're paying for. And if the school isn't providing what they think that their children need, they need to have a way to be able to take their kids to the schools they want and recover some of these funds. They're not going to get it all back, but they're going to recover a little bit of it. I pay well over $30,000 for property taxes every year, and the majority of that goes into the public school system. And so I'm not getting anything out of it. And for me to be able to say some of my money should go to the private education, I think is fair.
I love public schools and I love private schools. There's room for both. What country, what economic system isn't better when there's competition between the two? I supported the original Scholarships Opportunity Act as it was written and passed in the last legislative session. I started a scholarship at my high school, which is a private high school, where I fund tuition assistance for low-income earning students. That being said, I am very cautious of when the government does get involved in taking away the will of the people. I think just because I may have supported the Private School Voucher Act, that sometimes I might tend to think I would support this 1402 bill. However, if the situation were reversed and it was something that I wanted on the ballot, and the state government took that opportunity away from me to vote on it, well, that would make me pretty upset. So no, I would say no to LB 1402 for that reason, as it takes away the will of the people.
First of all, we need both good public and private schools. I hate this idea that we're going to, it's public school versus private schools. We need both. My kids attend Aquinas private school. And we're the only school, only state in the nation that doesn't have a school choice program. I mean, California has that. We don't have that. And school choice elevates both the public and the private schools. Like Dennis said, if you're an inner city student and you're failing in North Omaha in a school, and you have a poor parent who can't afford to put it anywhere else, what are they supposed to do? Are they supposed to continue to send that child to a failing school? There needs to be competition. You have to have competition that elevates both the public and the private school. That's my stance on that.
Okay. Well, I will just get down to the nitty and gritty. LB 1402 is being passed as a favor for the current senator that's terming out. They're ignoring the will of the people that was put for the petition against it. And to be perfectly frank, there were a lot of liars that were out there gathering signatures for that petition. It was very unfortunate, and they misconstrued the truth. However, when it's done and said, we have an obligation to follow the will of the people. And those who are against it or for it have a responsibility to put the education out there so that you can make the best decision on that. That being said, the real problem that we have here is that tax dollars are being taken and people want their tax money back. So the real solution, because Nebraska does have school choice, you can send your child wherever you want to send them. The problem is the tax dollars, and so we should be eliminating property income and corporate taxes and going to a consumption-based tax. Problem solved.
We have a question from the audience, and Mr. Zavadny, will we begin with you? Many rural health facilities have closed because of a lack of financial support for the workers. How do you plan to support rural health facilities?
Well, that's a question that I really wish my oldest son was here for right now. He's in his first year of medical school, and during that first year, he's got a lot of opinions on what we need to do with healthcare. One of the big things we need to do is get people who graduate from UNMC or other medical schools to come practice in rural areas. One of the great accomplishments we've had in recent years is specialists spend a day or two a month coming to our rural hospitals. I think government needs to stay out of it for the most part, but our biggest problem is probably insurance companies and the huge profits they take, and very little goes to doctors and the people actually providing nurses and all the support staff that provide those things. It's important to not have to drive 200 miles to get medical care. So we need to keep our health facilities as healthy as we possibly can.
I think some of the first things we need to do is to work with experts in these fields and find out what the needs are or what they recommend as to what needs to be done. But I think it all needs to start with the community. Your community leaders have to get together and they have to work on housing, childcare, and make sure that that these things are taken care of with the infrastructure, basically, so that people will want to come and live here and work in the community. And make sure that the rural hospital is profitable. To make sure the rural hospital is profitable, you have to make sure that things like Medicare and Medicaid pay the bills that need to be paid so that the hospital can be profitable. Many times I think the government payments to the individual hospital aren't enough to cover costs, and so they're losing money when they take care of Medicare or Medicaid patients.
So we had this question last night at the Chamber of Commerce's one, and I had answered it, and then I had actually gotten a lot of phone calls and emails because my sister is a physician's assistant in rural Iowa, Southwest Iowa, and my mom is an executive at Blue Cross Blue Shield. So they certainly have a lot of opinions about my answer. And gave me some good talking points, so I'm going to use those, and like Mr. Kuyan said, consult with the experts. Well, I have two in my family. So typically your rural hospital, your rural healthcare facility is the #1 employer within that county. And we really need to protect the employment of our people, whether it be as the caretaker professionals or just some of those workers that work nights, from blue collar to white collar. And we need an incentivization program within our small communities to target qualified healthcare workers and get them out into our spaces. And infrastructure growth, because we need to grow our communities with, especially with keeping the people who are already there, grow them with new families so that there's a need and a supply and demand that will offer for your likelihood and economics to drive costs down.
Yeah, the issue we have here too, that you have to look at is if you run a small hospital, a rural hospital, they have to care for anybody that walks through your door. And we have a southern border that's wide open right now. The Biden administration is letting anybody flood into this country. Okay, they're going to show up in a hospital and need to be taken care of. So this is a federal issue too. We have to talk to our congressmen, our senators, Pete Ricketts, Mike Flood. We have to get as many funds as we can get from the federal government to help these hospitals to stay open. Because if they don't get it, they're going to be in a very bad position. And like Jacob said, you know, your hospital in the community is usually the biggest employer. So we have to keep economics growth going. We have to make it so people can live and work in those communities. We have to lower taxes. We have to make sure that hospitals are there to serve everyone that walks through that door.
Would you rephrase the question just one more time, just so we can hear it again?
Many rural health facilities have closed because of a lack of financial support for the workers. How do you plan to support rural health facilities?
So, do you guys remember what happened 4 years ago? We had a whole bunch of federal and local mandates that came down that took a major hit on our rural communities, hospitals, nursing homes, and they started closing down left and right. And you know what that caused that? Government overreach. Government overreach caused that. The federal government especially getting in the way and taking funding and aid away. So obviously that's not where the solution is really going to come from. What I recognize as the solution is that the state legislature spends hundreds of millions of dollars on pet projects through UNMC and DHHS and so on and so forth. And I think that it's about time that we have somebody on the HHS committee that will focus on appropriating those funds and dollars more so to the rural communities and spending less on the pet projects and experimental stuff like UNMC.
Yeah, I love this question. Nationally, over 41% of rural hospitals are facing closure, and here in Nebraska, that's no exception. So the first thing that we have to do is make sure that patients can afford the care that they're going to receive at those hospitals. I appreciate, I'm sorry, I don't remember who said it, but I did appreciate the kind of head nod to Medicare and Medicaid provider reimbursement rates. I think it's very important that our state make sure that the doctors that are providing that care are being compensated adequately for their work. The legislature already has a really excellent program where they pay off a portion of the student loans of doctors and nurses who agree to come practice in smaller communities. I'd like to see programs like that expanded as well as better publicized, because I'm not sure everyone knows that's a possibility. I think we need to see more emphasis on telehealth services as well, and there's no reason that people in our rural communities shouldn't be getting the same world-class health care that you can get in Omaha and Lincoln.
This next question will start with Mr. Fuyan. Many in Nebraska are concerned with the high property taxes paid within our state. What is your stance on property tax reform in LB 388?
Well, when you talk about property taxes, everybody will tell you that they're too high. Everybody wants property taxes to be lowered, and everybody wants services. So we have to decide exactly how we're going to fund services, and schools are no exception. I don't know that there's a real good plan other than, I think you really have to start with controlling spending. And every government entity should be able to trim their budgets in order to make a little bit of contributions to controlling the spending. So I think we start with controlling spending and making sure that property taxes aren't the one that's paying the bills all the time. Allie is always talking about using the epic tax and consumption tax, and I'm not sure that's exactly the way to go, but we definitely need to do something to make sure that property taxes, because property taxes takes money from my retirement package, so I'll stop there since time ran out.
So from what I've seen this last session and the session before, and likely even those beyond that, is that any bills that are being passed with regards to property tax relief, it's typically an increase in tax somewhere else. I met a voter and I asked them, how would you feel if we maybe groceries or gas in favor of property tax relief. And his response was, why does it always have to be one or the other with you guys? It's not your money. I thought, well, that's a really good point. So I agree with it. And what we need to do is first is the immediate relief to property taxes is getting these state entities that are often not unelected bodies between the Property Assessment Council and the TEEC that controls property valuations across the state, and we need some kind of cap so that we're not going from 2% to 14% in a single year and not understanding why. And then across it, as far as reform goes, we need revenue diversification, recruit new industries, new businesses into the state to generate that revenue that property tax can give up.
So I don't think LB 388 is going to pass. Governor Pillen's talked about calling a special session in the summer to call him in to get some type of property tax relief. But I think we have to be clear on this. This isn't really a tax cut. It's a tax shift and a tax increase. It would add $650 million of new taxes in the state. We'd be in the top 10 highest in the nation in sales tax. And I'm not sure at the end of the day we'd see much property tax relief because there's nothing really capped. It's a soft cap. So it would really be bad if we raised all these taxes on everybody and at the end of the day we saw no property tax relief. The only way to lower taxes is to cut spending. It's the only way to do it. You have to figure out where you're going to cut and how you're going to do it. And it's needs versus wants. I'm surprised Dennis didn't say that. That's his line. What do we truly need as a state? What do we want? And that's what we have to truly do. And I would love to be in the revenue committee in the legislature and work towards that for true tax relief.
Well, this answer is easy. We should be eliminating property income and corporate taxes and going to consumption-based tax. Here's the problem, guys. We all know the answer is to cut spending, but have you ever tried to ask a politician not to spend your money? Really, how does that work out? Very often, not very well. I can tell you the NRD here just passed a $5 million building for 6 employees. And there were people there who asked them and pled with them not to spend that money, and they did it anyway. The legislature has done the same thing year after year, and like Jared said, LB 388 is just a tax shift. Unfortunately, it's not one that's going to provide the relief that Nebraskans are truly needing. So you have to ask yourself, do you guys own your own home? Do you guys own your own labor? Do you guys own your future for Nebraskans? Because if the answer is yes to any or no to any of those, then you should be asking for an elimination of those taxes altogether. Take your own money back.
So I think everybody in this room probably agrees that property taxes are way too high. And in my opinion, one of the reasons that we rely so much on local funding is because we have a lot of unfunded mandates coming out from Lincoln. We have the state legislature telling the towns and the counties, you must do this, and not actually providing them the funding that they need to get those things done, which means that we have to rely on local sources of funding, such as property taxes. We absolutely need to look at rebalancing the way that we fund our public schools. We need to have more state aid for public schools. Across the state of Nebraska, more state aid is going to schools in Omaha and Lincoln than it is going to in rural communities, and so I would like to see more state aid for our schools in our smaller communities. And as Mr. Zavadi alluded to a little earlier, we need to fight for the federal aid that's available. If we are not receiving it, it's going to go elsewhere. Those tax dollars are going to get spent, and so you need a state legislature who's going to fight for your community.
LB 388 doesn't go far enough and it's not the answer. We have a broken system. Property taxes are assessed locally, collected locally, spent locally. Local control is really important and less government, but responsibility for education, I think, needs to shift to the state. So a cost per student with some built in for overhead and figure out how to go forward. Property taxes are between a $4 and $5 billion a year dollar item for Nebraska. So we need to look at, there's going to have to be some kind of shift. We need to start with exemptions, maybe lessen some of those. We just keep building exemptions. So we add a little here, we add a little here. Pretty soon there are a lot of exemptions. So start there, and we need to target how much money we need and slowly work to get to that number that will educate our students and not make the state go broke.
classmates are members of volunteer fire departments either in Dodge County or Saunders County. What is your plan to help support our volunteer first responders?
Yeah, great question, and love seeing that the younger community is getting involved in that, because that's what we need to really get our recruitment base out of. When I was in the Navy in Virginia Beach, I was a volunteer EMT. BLS, we just called it basically lifting stuff, because the firemen did most of the hard work. We just carried them. But that was a city bigger than the size of Omaha that had all volunteer EMS, so it can be done. And how they did it was they had huge recruitment initiatives, and they got government out of the way. They kept up with their national recognized test, and then they just had regular annual trainings like anybody in any industry has to do. So that's one piece of it, is that recruitment of especially that 18 to 35-year-olds, and get them more involved in your local EMS, and also making it a essential service within the state of Nebraska, and really get the maintenance centers back online, so that way we don't have crippling infrastructure when we're having an emergency.
Yeah, this is near and dear to my heart. My father was the volunteer fire chief when I was growing up. His father was the chief before him. So I know very well how important first responders are to a community. They're the first line of defense in all these small communities when there's a fire, car wrecks, anything happens, they ring the beeper goes off, or you get a text, or the siren goes off, and they get in their car at 2 in the morning and they go out for free, and they protect us. And so I have a real soft spot in my heart for first responders and law enforcement. I think we should do whatever we can at the state level to help lower regulations. I know insurance cost is through the roof, and the training expense and the time that they have to put in training for EMTs and firefighters is pretty lengthy. They could help maybe dial that back a little bit where they could. I'd be all for that.
Well, first and foremost, I know that UTAN has a fantastic youth training group to lead you guys into working with the volunteer fire department. I watch it on the Saunders County community page all the time. Little kids out there practicing putting out fires with the firefighters. And to be perfectly honest, that is the best way to promote community involvement and ensuring that we have the needs for our volunteer fire department and first responders. From the state level, they focus a lot more on the first-class cities. I know just this session they passed legislation to help with the retirement and insurance costs for first-class cities. And it's hard for them to address the smaller villages and cities because they are volunteer fire departments. So I think looking at specifically promoting grants would be a great way to go about that. But obviously, I'm going to be at every pancake feed I possibly can, because you guys make great pancakes, and it's a good way to support our communities and their fire departments.
I really appreciate anybody who steps up and takes the time to volunteer for their community, and specifically our first responders. I wish that we could have professional firefighting departments in every town in our state, but that comes back to what I was saying a little bit earlier about rebalancing our tax structure and making sure that our local funding stays within our local communities. The first thing that we can do to support our volunteer firefighters is just remember them, be kind to them, keep them in our hearts. It begins with respect. And those volunteer firefighters, they deserve to have world-class facilities. That's something, if the county wants to take care of it, or if that's something we could get more state funding for, there's no reason that our volunteer fire departments shouldn't have the same facilities that professional firefighter departments do.
Well, I certainly want to echo what many have said about thanking people who answer that call in the middle of the night and all hours of the day, really, when people are in need and at one of their most vulnerable times. So that is an important thing. I think one thing we want to make sure we can do is help them with any training needs they might have. Best practices is great in everything you do. Sometimes people say, why did they need that new truck or that ladder truck? Well, the equipment's important to keep current because that affects your city's ISO ratings and your insurance and all those things. And most people don't think about those kinds of things when it comes to the equipment. So having good equipment's important. We should make sure that they don't face unnecessary liability in doing that kind of work. And finally, I think the best thing you can do is lessen regulations that that are unnecessary and just keep getting added and added and added as an unfunded mandate.
Here I am back on the end of a question, and everything that's been said is right. Reducing regulations on departments is a huge thing. It's very expensive to run small departments, especially when you don't have funding for the things that you need to do. So the government needs to reduce regulations on it. We need to make sure training is provided, but I think there's too much, it's expensive training. If you have to be if you train to be an EMT, it takes many, many hours and a lot of money in order to be able to be approved for training. So a little bit of training would be helpful instead of having a huge amount of training. Some is better than none. Liability reduction is another huge thing. We need to make sure that these people that are out there giving their lives for us to save lives are not held liable if something goes wrong. And equipment. We need to make sure that they are allowed to buy the equipment they need, because if they don't have up-to-date equipment, they can't possibly perform the job.
Our time for questions has expired. We've been listening to the candidates now for nearly 50 minutes. I would like to thank the candidates for coming to our school this evening, but I'd also like to give you each the opportunity to express for a final time, with 30 seconds each, why should these voters select you on election day? Mr. Storm, we'll start with you. 30 seconds. I know, 30 seconds.
Yeah, first of all, I want to thank everybody for this. It's been an awesome experience. I think I'm the right person at the right time. I'm a strong leader. I'm a conservative Christian, and I'm going to take those morals and values to the state legislature and do the right thing. I'm not going there to try to just be a good old boy. I'm not going there to just try to be check a box and say I'm a state senator. I'm going there to be a public servant.
Thank you.
I really just want to go help people. Send me down there so I can go fight for us, so I can stand up, apply some common sense. The most important thing is that we have somebody who can be effective without compromising to false narratives, misinformation, and that will stand up for the needs of the people in our community. This is something that is near and dear to my heart. I want to make sure that my children are free, and I hope that you guys will send me down there, because I have spent a lot of time at that legislature, and I know what it's going to take to do the job.
Well, thank you all so much for being here tonight. Your vote is your voice, and whoever you choose to vote for, I really hope that you choose to exercise that right on May 14th. You deserve a state senator who understands what the issues in your community are and who will fight for your rights to clean drinking water, safe, affordable housing, medical facilities, child care facilities. I promise my door will always be open. I'll always be ready to have a conversation, a civil one.
I'll start by saying I'm not really all that comfortable talking about myself, and that's a fact. I'm probably maybe the only introvert on this whole panel, but I think my experience and skill set me a little bit apart from the other people on the table here. I've had many friends that have been state senators, and the one advice that they seem to keep coming to is keep your moral compass. And that's the most important thing you can have, because it will be challenged serving in that job.
As I said in my opening, faith, family, and farming is what drives me. I'm very passionate about agriculture. Agriculture is the #1 industry in the state, as I've told you before. So I want to make sure that we protect agriculture. When agriculture is strong, the state is strong. I'm pro-life, pro-Second Amendment. I believe that we need to make sure that we support all of our government officials, our law enforcement, our fire departments, anything like that. So I just want to make sure that we engage with our officials and support our people.
I love this state and I love this country. And when I left this state to go join the Navy, all I could think about was when I was going to get back to it, because I have a deep-rooted passion for this state and this community. I met my wife in Florida, and when I was leaving the Navy and we decided where to raise our family, it was tough convincing her to move here and raise our family until I brought her here, and she realized what a great community this is. And we want other people in this state and in this country to feel that same sense of community and come to Nebraska and invest in it.
Thank you very much. We have a few thank yous before we call it an evening. We want to thank Mr. Potomi. This evening was his idea. He promoted it, he organized it, he did an outstanding job. I also like to, Ms. Yasta and I would also like to thank our students in American government, our students in constitutional law. I think you know how much Ms. Yasta and I appreciate you and respect you. I also want to thank, and this is together, I want to thank our candidates, and I want to recognize our adult members here. What you did today, folks, you don't even realize you did. You modeled what it means to be an American for our students, to be involved, to be respectful. We can have a great country, and we can do it under civil ways. I appreciate that. So thank you to the audience. Thank you to the candidates. Right now, the audience now has, I think we're about 30 minutes to come up and visit with the candidates. And I challenge my students, if there was a candidate up here that you're like, I just agree with that person, I bet you have 6 people up here that would be willing to say, hey, I'll take you on my campaign team. We could use some help. And you know, there's always extra credit out there for that. But thank you all for attending. We appreciate it. Thank you.